everyone, and welcome to the Art of Leading, Captivating Leadership Narratives, all part of the stuff that growth is made of. I'm excited to introduce you to Mariekarl Vilceus-Talty. Marie is the president and CEO at the Partnership for Maternal and Child Health of Northern New Jersey and a member of my Vistage CEO Peer Advisory Group. Hello, Mariekarl.
Hello there, Margaret. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today. I am a huge fan, and I'm thrilled that our audience, our listeners, get a chance to meet you through this podcast as well. So
I'm very excited. And I too am a huge fan of yours.
Well, thank you very much. And we always talk about our lipsticks and glasses. So always fun at that.
Sure.
But what I'd love to do is I'd love to share, I'd love for you to start by just giving me an overview of, who is the partnership and what is it that you guys focus on?
Oh, the partnership is a wonderful, wonderful organization. I would love to start by saying that I am a nurse, once a nurse, always a nurse. I have been a maternal child nurse and in acute care nursing for over 30-something years. We'll leave it at that. And always interested in maternal child. And I had the opportunity to work at the opportunity to lead the Partnership for Maternal and Child Health of Northern New Jersey, which is one of the three state-mandated consortia. So there are three of us in the state, and I cover the northern part of New Jersey, which is the 8 counties in the north. So under our purview, we have 22 hospitals and 4 birthing centers. So what is a consortium? It's really just a group of organizations that work together for the common goal. So what we're doing is working specifically for maternal health initiatives. So within that, we lead a lot of education. We have over 30 different programs for women and birthing people and their families to help them thrive, not only survive, but thrive throughout the reproductive age. So from 14 to 55, we have a lot of educational sessions. We have a lot of different programs for mothers, fathers also, and children to help support their thriving. Within working with our providers, our member hospitals, we work a lot with standardizing care, ensuring that quality care is there, working together, making sure that there's really no competition, but we work on quality initiatives and vital statistics. So we really do a lot within the maternal child space, making sure that we're coordinating and educating the public between that episodic care that they get within the hospital. So it's a lot. So the short end of it is we work on maternal health initiatives.
I also love that we're talking about it during the month celebrating women. So it's
yes, absolutely.
It's even though we're just getting it by a day or two at the end of the month, but I think that's great. And then I also know as we were talking before, you mentioned that Maternal Health Week is coming up. And what is that? So I'm not familiar with that.
We really start in January with January 23rd. And that is really the kickoff. And we want to say that maternal health is not only about women and children, but maternal health is really about public health, because we know that women make 80% of the healthcare decisions. So when mom and baby are doing fine, that means that dad is getting his checkup. Sisters doing so on and so forth. The whole family is healthy. So that means that the population is really healthy. So when we're talking about Maternal Health Week, we're really bringing a hyper focus on what's going on with women's health. So when we're talking about women's health, we're talking about education, reproductive health, choice, education, underline, access, knowing what are the social determinants of health and what are the barriers that are precluding us from being healthy. Unfortunately, within the United States right now, and I can talk specifically about New Jersey, our statistics are quite alarming. We, as Black women, are 7 times more likely to die from 85% preventable complications than our white counterparts. Doesn't make any sense. Black babies are 3 times more likely to not see their first birthdays. than their white counterparts. Black women are 3 times more likely to experience a stillbirth. And then when you segment out his Latina and Latinx birthing people, Alaskan Native, Native American people, those statistics are also quite dire. So what is happening? What are the social determinants of health that are happening? What's the coordination of care that is not happening? So we're really bringing to light throughout the year these issues, and we're talking about solutions and how can we help, and what is the intersection of health, economics, wellness, what is that intersection, and how can we help change that paradigm?
Such an important topic, and those statistics are a bit shocking when you
They're
think
disgusting.
about being in the United States, and this is what's going on, right. I'm in Manhattan, right in our own backyard. It's just it's a crazy thing to think about. So,
it is
thank
quite
you
crazy.
for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and some states are more dire. Like if you have Louisiana, they're 12 times more likely.
Yeah, I bet.
Some places in New York, sometimes there are healthcare deserts, and women have to drive 40 miles to get, healthcare, which should not be in a nation like ours.
Yeah. Well, they found the perfect person for the role to lead this up. You could hear your passion and what I'd love for you to do, is share a little bit. I know you mentioned that you were a nurse for many, many years and a lead nurse. So just a little bit about your career journey, which led you to your current leadership role.
Absolutely. So I would love to say that it runs in my blood. My mother was the oldest of 9, and within our family it's a over proliferation of nurses and doctors and healthcare workers. So I feel like I really didn't have a choice, but I did fall in love with OB since my mother was, and she was a midwife and she was an obstetrician, born and raised in New York. Hold on 1 second. Oh, wait, hold on. My nephew.
Oh, no problem.
So born and raised in New York, and so she worked at Kings County, so she would take me to work with her. And I was always so interested in what was going on, where do babies come from, what can we do to make this better? So I was always interested in maternal child health. So I became a nurse, have always worked in maternal child, specifically in labor and delivery. And as you can tell, I had that personality that was like, I think I could do this better. So my charge nurse would always be like, okay, so if you think you can, feel free. So I did end up in leadership. And I just really enjoy bringing the best out in people, helping people reach their full potential. I believe that when you show up authentically, the universe does really shift for you and really makes it great. So I worked all throughout New York in different leadership roles, and then we moved to New Jersey after a stint of living overseas. And I've been working in New Jersey since 2014. Got leadership roles here, ended up my last position. I was the senior director of nursing, where I was over inpatient units, including maternal health and patient experience. And then I transitioned over to the partnership. So it's been quite a wild journey. I really enjoy bringing the community together, empowering the community, letting people know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and really being an advocate for the community. It's very important to me. It's very important to me.
But it's also, you have seen it from both sides. So you've lived it, and now you're partnering with some of those people that in the roles that you had, which is really important. So thank you for sharing that. So if you were to go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self as you look at just as you've moved along in your career?
What advice would I give my younger self? I often think of people that often say, don't ever change. And the advice that I would give my younger self is, yes, keep changing, bring yourself authentically to the table And I know now when we talk about being authentic, it's very easy, right? We're in 2024 and it's like, yes, bring authentic, be authentic, bring your whole self to the table. When I was coming up through leadership and just, being a young woman in the world, being a Black woman in the world, that was not available to me. I couldn't bring my authentic self
Mm,
to the table. The conversations that we're having now about, Black is beautiful and you could wear your hair, and that was not something that was within my purview, or even within my
mm,
grasp, right? I had to code switch, which is a reality that people don't have to do now. And that's what I had to deal with. So what I would tell myself is just bring your whole self to the table. Don't hold back. And you'll have the same outcome, because I truly do believe your destiny is just there for you.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's you know, I worked in an environment where I was definitely a minority from a female perspective, but being a female and a woman of color, we all have
Mhm.
very different experiences. So that's thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
so much easier and so much better now. People are talking about DEI, even though we know that yesterday and today they're attempting to take DEI out of medicine, which is also a problem. Um, but it's a conversation that you can have now.
yeah,
25 years ago, it was not a conversation that was available to me. And even if I did speak up, there would be repercussions for that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it is, yeah. So I would definitely say bring your whole self to the table. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. So, it's interesting, and I'd love to talk about this from two angles. I believe you were at the hospital during COVID. Am I right
I
about that?
was. Yes.
Horrible. Can't imagine what you saw and experienced every day. So I'd love to ask you some questions. One is from the hat you were wearing at the time, which was one of the most challenging positions. What were some of the lessons you learned or aha moments? And then when you came in, and then the second piece of it, when you transitioned into your role at the partnership, what were, I don't know if ramifications is the right word, but what was some of the residual effects of COVID that you saw coming
Hmm.
into this leadership role that was still hanging, if you will,
Hmm. Hmm.
from that time, and the impact maybe that it also had at the partnership perspective?
Hmm. Being in the hospital at that particular time, I was the senior director of nursing. So under my purview, I had several different inpatient units that were housing COVID patients, and I also was over maternal health that also had COVID patients. So working with the nurses, attempting to support them throughout a extremely difficult time, because you have to recall, in the beginning, is it the flu? Is it like the flu? Is it not like the flu? And it was every like 2 hour blocks that we were getting new information. So whatever you were doing at 12 o'clock, by 4:30, it was a different protocol. So that was extremely challenging. So you have these staff members looking to you for information, support, guidance, and trust, right? Because these people had to go home to their families, and we had to ensure that we were giving them the right information, not only for them to be safe, but to keep their families safe. So you
Yeah,
can imagine how daunting that was. And then we had regulations coming down, and different quick standards coming down that, okay, pregnant people couldn't have anybody in the room with them. Can you imagine laboring by yourself without
hmm.
any support system, or just being in the hospital and you had to use your cell phone to talk to your significant other? It was extremely
Yeah,
challenging for the staff, for the patients that were there. So we were attempting to make it as humanistic and making sure that we were looking holistically at the situation 1 hour at a time. And we saw it, we knew what was happening. So when there was a vaccine, we were like, absolutely, yes, we are nurses, we are scientists. If this is going to help, this is what you need to do. And then I come a year later out of inpatient and acute care, and I come to the world of public health, where people are saying those nurses don't know what they're doing and they're just making this up. And there was so much disinformation and misinformation out there that you're like, I was taking people to the morgue.
Yeah. Horrible.
Nurses were getting sick, people, were committing suicide. And you're looking at this on political lines. So that was very, very challenging to come from a place of acute care where you're seeing actively living this, to attempting to have conversations with people saying, oh, it's all a conspiracy. So, having to toe that line and not have a visceral reaction, but understanding the fear that was in the community, specifically the Black and Brown community, that they're like, oh, yes, come up and get your vaccines. And the Black and Brown community is like, wait a minute. Now you want us to come up and get something first? It hasn't been tested. I need some more information. And then you have the misunderstanding that, oh, these people that are anti-vaxxers, they don't care about you. Where it was really about the fear of, what is this going to do? Can I have children later? What are the ramifications of this? Questions that we really didn't have answers to. So people were pinning opinions on people and calling them anti-vaxxers, calling them ignorant, and so on and so forth, where it was really about fear, and we weren't seeing the other side. So I really did have the purview to see both sides, which I'm extremely grateful for. So I was really able to have very candid conversations, talk to people about their fears and their reservations, and being a public health entity, explaining to the staff why we were mandating the COVID vaccine and why we had to mandate the flu vaccine. Because I, as a public servant, cannot attempt to educate the public. And when they ask me, well, what do you think about these vaccines? Oh, no, I didn't get it, but you need to get it.
Right.
That doesn't jive.
Gotta walk the walk, right?
Yeah, you have to walk the walk. You have to be cognizant. Your conversation has to be cogent, and know that you're doing this for the greater good. And in transitioning into my role at the partnership, we did mandate the COVID vaccine, mandated the flu vaccine, and we were lucky enough to assist in vaccinating thousands, tens of thousands of people. We knew that we made these communities safer. And we knew that having the conversation about healthcare heroes wasn't only about nursing. It was about the housekeepers that were really the engineers of safety. Because if they didn't clean that bed properly, that room wasn't cleaned properly, there are pathogens left in the room, the next person is going to get ill. So making sure that when we talked about the heroes of COVID, we really encompassed the whole team. So it was really important to get that information out in the community, so I can tell them what I saw firsthand in the hospital and how that related to the health and well-being of the community. So that was a very good lesson for me, that I was able to do both of them and transition into those roles.
What a unique experience you brought to that, or view, and what a horrible time it must have been. I mean, I remember at one point you and I were talking, it's just like sitting in your car for a little bit before you go in or come out, or whatever that may be. So
yeah, it was.
It's hard to, as someone who didn't have to live through that, it's hard to get my head around what that must have been like. I mean, horrible, but it's
it was very, very, very challenging. And it really does assist you to gain perspective of what's really important in
Yeah.
life. When you're thinking, I'll do that tomorrow. It's like, no, you know what? What am I doing now?
Yeah.
Let me do that now. So not only did it change my perspective in terms of the work that I was committed to, but it changed my perspective to really living in the moment, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's a
And
great lesson
yeah,
that we all should, take seriously.
it's
So, yeah,
definitely easier said than done, but I know that now with you, I am absolutely with you, in tune to you, because anything is possible. And I want to
yeah,
be able to make sure that I'm living and breathing and really enjoying the moment that I'm in right now.
yeah. Well, wow. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Changing topics just a little bit, as you look as a leader, what would you say today is maybe your biggest challenge and opportunity?
Well, I always frame things around healthcare, and then I have a 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I'm like, well, what is the world gonna be like? So we always have these really in-depth conversations where they're like, oh, mom. And I'm like, well, in my day, and they're like, it's not like that anymore. And just having that younger workforce that is like, we're not going to stay here 20 years. That's not our thing. We want to work. We want to do good work. We want to do meaningful work. And we want to be able to have life work balance or life work integration. It's not work 40 hours and have 2 days off. It's really how can you live your most fullest life? That's one thing. So one of the challenges that we have at work right now, specifically in maternal health, is really speaking to DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, making sure that this staff is engaged, that they're accountable, that we are an equitable, anti-racist organization. And when we talk about inclusion and diversity, it's not just numbers. We want diversity of thought, we want diversity of ethnicity and culture and sexual orientation, because it's only when you bring all of those differences to the table that you have a most robust conversation. And that's the only way that you can get most proximate to the issue. Because if you're a homogeneous population, there's so many things that you're going to miss out on.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, Marie, I don't see color." First of all, I'm like, "You don't see this beautiful chocolate gumdrop that's here? Like, how could you not? You don't see all the things that I bring to the table. So you're missing something." So just because we have this atmosphere that's talking about DEIB and more division, we are so much more alike. And we all want the same thing. So how can we get there? Helping the most vulnerable and, using that curb cut effect to really lift society and help us move forward. Because without women's health, we're really doomed.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that women and children are healthy to be able to move the population forward.
What's so interesting, and there's so many things you talked about that's so important there. You know, it's interesting how the conversation has shifted a little bit to more inclusion and belonging, and and there's different things to do to make people feel that they
Mm-hmm.
belong there. So
100%.
I think that's really important. And I know you as a leader, since you've been there, you've done a lot of work just in this whole area as well. So I know that that's really important. The other thing that's important that's interesting, and again, as you talk about your kids, and that the workforce doesn't necessarily stay like you did for 30 years or whatever as a nurse, and for me 25 years
Mm-hmm.
at well. But we all know that people want to feel that there's a purpose at what they do. And what's so great about what you do in the partnership and the way you lead is it's really through this purpose.
It
You
is.
know, even just our conversation we had today, and you and I have had many, many conversations, it really drives everything you do and everything the organization does. So people, you know, it's nice because whether they stay a short or long time, you know that this purpose is something that's important to them.
Uh,
So,
one
um,
one hundred
and,
percent.
and
Yeah.
that's really important in business today. So, when you look at yourself as a leader, how do you measure success?
Before I would be like, oh, I've got the imposter syndrome. It's nothing, it's nothing. But then when I sit back, I was actually talking to to my family this weekend and telling them about all the wonderful things that we're doing and what I'm doing. And they're like, wow, are you humble? And I'm like, you know what? I said, I'm very good at what I do. How do I measure success? I have had the opportunity I'm lucky enough to have a very high sense of um, empathy. I have a very high social and emotional intelligence,
Absolutely.
and I have a knack for tapping into people to really boost their potential. And really say, like, Margaret, I realize that you like doing A, B, C, and D. Why don't we try working on that and bringing out the best in people? I'm really good in developing people, and I'm really good at delegating, even though it's something that I hate to do because in the back of my mind, I think no good comes from delegating. But I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to reach their best potential because sometimes I know that I'm like, oh, I can't do it. I know that I can, but I need that person to say, I see you and you're doing a great job. And I do that really well. So I know I have been in several different organizations where I've gone in and I've completely changed the paradigm. And I put systems in place to ensure that people have the tools that they need to really thrive and bring their best selves to work. And then they go, oh, okay, they hated it in the beginning, but then they see the vision. I have places that I worked in 1992 that specifically, I spoke to a woman today. She said, it has not been the same since you left. I left in 1992. So I have that knack of building community, building a sense of purpose that people remember that whether I'm there for a reason, season, or lifetime, I have made that impact. So when you talk about what do I consider a success in my leadership, it's really making an impact. Don't just give me numbers. What did I do? How did I change the paradigm? So going in, changing the paradigm, making people feel a sense of belonging, making people feel seen and heard,
Love
and
that.
bringing out their best selves is really something that I do very well.
I love
Not
that.
to brag.
And yeah, no, but you know what? And you know, you and I hit it off right away. The first
We
time we
did.
spoke, we hit it off away. And you have a high EQ, you are a warm person, you're smart, you're thoughtful. And I love those words about, you know, people do want to be heard and be seen. It really is so important,
Mhm.
especially as a leader. So those are just great nuggets for people who are listening. And I know something that you live and breathe. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Thank
So
you.
just and a few more questions. You've been very generous with your time. So
Absolutely.
so
No.
changing topics a little bit. What what are you reading these days, and what's your favorite leadership book as well? So two different questions. They
Oh
could be the
my
same answer or not.
my goodness. Actually, my favorite leadership book now is the book that we just read that I was not aware of, Great CEOs Are Lazy.
Such a good book.
And I know you said, here, read it. And I'm like, oh, I don't have time. I started reading it and I'm like, oh my goodness, I think I'm doing some of these things, but there's so much more that explains. So every page was an
Yeah,
aha moment.
yeah.
And I thought that was really, really great. So that's a very good book. the next book, of course, it's about healthcare, and it's called specifically Reproductive Injustice. And that's from Dana, I think it's Dana Ann Davis. Dana Ann Davis. And that's about racism, pregnancy, and premature birth, and just different people's experiences. And it's because it's so important to not only survive the birth, that should not be the benchmark. Like, oh, you
Yeah,
had a baby
I
and
agree.
you're
Yeah.
good. But you're
Yeah.
completely traumatized by your experience, right? So it has to be enveloping the whole person. And the other thing I'm obsessed about with my children is beating them with the Wordle and the connections. So every day I'm like, okay, I got it in 2. And my daughter's like, oh, I got it in 3, or so on and so forth. So those are the 3 things that are consistently on my mind.
That
Yeah.
sounds great. The Wordle is really fun to do
Yes.
against your kids, especially. They're
Yeah.
not very, they do a much better job on that than me, but sometimes I'm surprised. So,
Yeah.
well, this is great. So, one last question in closing. What would you say are some of the critical success factors or secret sauce to be an effective leader today?
You absolutely must have a board of directors. So that's why I was so happy that I met you, and I met another leadership coach. And because when I came from the hospital, I had my own, trauma bonded team that we had been in the hospital. We see different things every day. So you're trauma bonded, regardless if you like it or not. Though that is your board. And then once you leave that space and you become a CEO, everybody's looking to you for answers. And who do you bounce ideas off of? Is it going to be your direct report? You need that team around you that you can bounce your questions off of, your insecurities, and like, hey guys, am I doing this correctly? So having your board of directors and having a very diverse, cogent CEO peer group like I have with you at Vistage. And that's not even a plug. Remember when I
But
first got there,
I appreciate that.
when I first got to you, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm in healthcare. These people are in business, but I've learned so much being there. And, when they ask my opinion and they're like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I was like, oh, I do belong here. Yeah, it's the same thing. Business is
Absolutely.
business, and leading people is the same wherever you go. Motivating people is the same wherever you go. So I would say those 2 things are key. Keeping up to date with leadership books like the ones that you recommend, reading, you know, the best CEOs are lazy. And being a holistic servant leader. It's challenging because sometimes you have to make decisions that may not be in keeping with your own personal way of doing things, but you have to look at the company and what's good for the greater good. You're not going to keep one employee that is absolutely disruptive when you have 25 other employees that you can, bring up to the fold and give the tools that they need in their toolbox. And I would say even if you don't have a high emotional and social intelligence, learn. Read a book, learn about it, because that's very, very, very important. Very
Yeah.
important.
So many key nuggets of information that you shared today. Thank you. And
Thank you.
we can spend the next half hour talking more,
I
but I
know I
know
could
we
talk to you
can't.
some
So,
more.
yeah. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughtful insights about the art of leading. And thank you all for listening. This is the stuff that growth is made of.
Thank you.